All right, quick video here. Well, I hope it's quick. I'm going to try to do as much of a condensed version as I can. But what I and a few others have been looking at lately um, is the book of Acts, chapters 27 and 28. And these chapters are ostensibly about Paul being taken as a prisoner to Rome on a ship. And they're going through the Mediterranean, and it's kind of like really a treacherous journey. Uh, but what I and a few others are seeing is that there's actually a celestial scene depicted or hidden, in this in the scripture here, right? So, uh, okay. So first of all, you have to look at the numbers that are involved. Okay, so you've got Acts. This is chapter 27 and chapter 28. Okay, and then in Acts 27 verse 37, you've got that's the verse where they mention um, 276, which is a kind of, it's like there's like these two mystery numbers in the New Testament, and the first one is 153, which you probably know of. That's the 153 catch of fish, and the other one is this 276. It's kind of like, what does this mean, right? So we think we found out what it means. Okay, so you got the Acts chapter 26 and 27. You've got your 27:37, because that's the verse where it's found. Okay, and then you've got your 276. Okay, so first of all, so Acts 27, chapter 27 and 28, like I said, are about this ship voyage. Okay, now, and then if you look at in Stellarium, on the 27th and the 28th of December, okay, the sun every year just happens to be right over this ship, right? So, like, right at the mast, okay, of this ship. So you see the ship here in the constellation line. So this is the constellation Sagittarius. And this is the upper part of Sagittarius. And the lines look like a ship. Now, side note, this is also what the enemy is using in a lot of their occult sort of, and people call it predictive program, but it's kind of like hidden messaging stuff. So like they'll show, like in iPet Go 2 or in Skyfall or in Taylor Swift's music video Karma, they'll show like somebody standing up in a canoe. Okay, sometimes there's fire involved, like in iPet Go 2, there's fire at the person standing in the canoe, at that person's feet. So that's what they're trying to show. They're trying to show this constellation, right, Sagittarius. They're showing this upper part where the lines look like a ship. Okay, and the mast, the way they, well, I call it a mast because that's sort of the first thing that pops in my mind here. But in their symbolism, they depict that as a person standing in the canoe. So that's why they have that in, Taylor Swift's Karma and iPet Go 2 and Skyfall. Okay, and in a couple of those, I think in iPet Go 2, there's fire at that person's feet, which is supposed to symbolize the sun. So they're showing you that the sun is intersecting with this constellation, right? And then in Skyfall, they do the cinematography where there's some fire, like right in the foreground, and then James Bond is standing in this canoe, and he goes behind the fire, so it looks as though the fire is on him. So that's how they show it, that he represents the sun, right? And then of course he goes into this, it's going to a Chinese festival, so he goes into this mouth of this dragon. So that's how they show you that they're entering the year of the dragon, right? 2024. Anyway, that's besides the point. So in Acts 27 and 28, that corresponds to December 27th and 28th. Where where it goes into where it's going to be right over above the ship, and the story, the narrative is about a ship, right? Now, of course, there's more than even at the 23rd here, right, and then all the way to like the 1st and 2nd of January, it's still above the ship, right? But I'm going to narrow down why it's about the 27th and 28th, okay? So 27th and 28th, you can at least say it's right there in the center, or it's centered above that ship. Okay, so the next thing is that in Acts 28, chapter 28, verse 11. So right here, okay. So this is after, I don't know how familiar you are with Acts, but they basically shipwreck and they have to winter in Malta, okay. And then after 3 months of wintering there, they leave again. That happens in Acts 28, okay. And they leave in a different ship because the previous ship obviously got destroyed. And this ship has a sign of Castor and Pollux. Okay, now Castor and Pollux refers to the constellation Gemini. That's just what they called it back then. Okay, that's the name. Those were the names of the twins, because Gemini is a constellation of twins. So, if the first part of this, oh, please tell me I'm actually recording. Oh, looks like I am recording. Good. I was going to be really pissed if I wasted all that talking. Okay, so if the first part of this was that it's showing that the first hint, I should say, is that, okay, the sun should be in Sagittarius, right? Or in other words, sun should be over this ship. This is the next hint. Okay, so it's about Castor and Pollux, the constellation Gemini. So if we look on those days, where's my stellarium? There it is. Okay, on those days, the 27th, 28th. So the moon is in Gemini, okay, on the 27th and the 28th. See, on the 29th, it's not anymore. And on the 26th, it's not there yet. So on the 27th and 28th, the moon is in Gemini, okay, just like Castor and Pollux, okay. So it's setting up this scene. Now, that by itself is not terribly convincing, okay. Now, here's the thing. The big mystery number there in Acts 27:37 is 276, like I had mentioned, okay? And if you look at the sun on these two dates, right, the 27th, to the 28th, the sun's ecliptic longitude is 276 degrees. You probably can't, I don't know if you can see it here, but if you click on a, you might have to look at this video on your desktop. I don't know if it's going to be visible on a cell phone, but if you're on a cell phone, you just have to take my word for it and then go rewatch it on the desktop later. But if you click on any planet or star or whatever, right, it shows you some information. So if I clicked on the sun here, and so the ecliptic longitude, okay, so that's like it's just like longitude on a planet. It just shows you where you are on the ecliptic. The ecliptic is like the plane of the solar system, or really it's the plane of the Earth, right? And so as the sun moves across this ecliptic around the Earth, well, really it's the Earth around the sun, but it's all relative, right? As it does that all throughout the year, you go from 0 to 360 degrees, okay? So when it gets to this point, only on these 2 days, the 27th of December and the 28th of December, it's at the ecliptic longitude of 276 degrees. So now it's looking pretty, this proof or evidence that Acts 27 and 28 is presenting a celestial scene is looking pretty convincing at this point. I think it's almost like it's impossible to deny at this point, So you've got the sun over this constellation that looks like a ship on the 27th and 28th, corresponding to Acts chapter 27 and 28, where a ship narrative is being described. And then you've got the ship narrative describing, also mentioning Gemini constellation, Castor and Pollux, and that's exactly where the moon is on those particular 2 days, and only on those 2 days. And then you've got the sun on those particular 2 days in the ecliptic longitude of 276, this mystery number that they happen to mention in Acts 27:37. Okay, I hope this is all clear to you guys. Now, to me, this is a slam dunk case. I mean, it's impossible that this can't be true. This can't be what God is hinting at in the scripture. Okay, so that's that. All that said, now the sun, of course, obviously it can be said the sun here is going to be around the mast on the 27th and 28th of December every year, okay? Likewise, it's going to be at ecliptic longitude of 276 degrees every year. So what's so special about why do we care about this in this year? Okay, well, that's that other clue about Gemini. That's only going to happen this year. I mean, obviously it's going to happen other years, maybe 20 years ago or something like that. But I checked going back like 10 years and forward 10 years, and in the last 10 years and in the next 10 years, the moon will never be in the constellation Gemini on those 2 days, or even close to it. Actually, I think there was one year where it was like kind of close. It was in the horns of Taurus, but it won't be like it is now. On those 2 days where the sun is at 276 degrees of ecliptic longitude and it's over the ship. If you're in that longitude, then you're always over the ship. But you know what I'm saying, okay? So that's amazing. Okay, that's what we found, and so we actually thought that maybe that the rapture was going to happen around that time, the 27th and 28th. But the thing is, there's a narrative here we have to follow. Okay, so going back to the scripture here. So what happens in Acts 27 is, Paul sails for Rome. They hit bad weather, and there's a storm. Okay, and I'm just kind of reading as I try to describe this, so forgive me. It's a tempestuous wind called Euroclydon. And so they have to basically, so they're all scared, and they have to drive the ship into land, right? During the storm. So they have to what's the word for it? They have to, it's a shipwreck, but there's a word for it. Run the ship aground. That's what I'm trying to say. They have to run the ship aground, which wrecks the ship. That's the shipwreck. And they're doing this on the island of Malta. Okay, and this happens. Let's see. Yeah, in Acts 27:41. Okay. It says, and falling into a place where the two seas met, they ran the ship aground, and the forepart, like the front part of the ship, stuck fast. So it's saying the front part of the ship was immovable. I guess that's what it's trying to say. It's stuck on the beach, right? Yeah, there it goes. That's what it says right after, and remained unmovable. And the hind part was broken by the violence of the waves. Now, that's also relating to what's going on in California right now, where you've got these really violent waves. So, but I'll get to that, how that's all connected later. So, yeah, what am I saying here? Okay, so that's a few verses after they mentioned the 276 souls. Okay, so they get stuck on this island called Malta. All right, we'll go to chapter 28 now, and they call it Melita here, but then it's actually Malta. I guess this is an alternate name. And they got treated really well. So they had to stay there. They had to winter there for 3 months. Okay, so after these 3 months of wintering, they couldn't leave because that's that time of the year where you don't really sail, and also their ship was destroyed. So after 3 months, they departed in a new ship. I guess it comes from Alexandria. So this is in Acts 28:11, and that was the sign. That was the ship that had the sign of Castor and Pollux. And so then they get to Syracuse, and they tarried there for 3 days at Syracuse, which is in Sicily. Okay, and yeah, so if you take this timing, so basically this first part that I was explaining is that Acts 27 and 28 is setting up this celestial scene. It's describing the celestial scene that I showed you on the 27th and 28th when the sun is at the ecliptic longitude of 276 degrees. Okay. So now you get, that's like the celestial sort of point in time or time marker or milestone from which you then apply the next clue. And the next clue is here where it's saying tarried 3 days. So from from December 27th to 28th, you add 3 days, and that takes you to December 30th to 31st, right? So New Year's Eve, right, around that time frame. So that's what we're thinking there's a good chance the rapture might happen on New Year's Eve. Okay. Now it also says here that they tarried there for 3 days, and then they went to Regium. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. Regium. And interesting. My brother, who runs the Raw Repent channel, pointed out that name, if you look it up on Google, it means rupture. So I think that might be a little a little kind of joke or hint or something from our Father that is referring to rapture. And if you look on the map, where am I here? Of that part of the world, right here. Yeah, I probably need to zoom in, but I can't. So they're coming all the way through the Mediterranean over here, and they get to Regium, and that's the last spot before they go through this very, very narrow little. It's kind of like a gateway, right? It's kind of like a narrow gate. So Regium means rupture, which is sort of a little hint for rapture, and then you go through this little, I don't know, breach or something. This little like narrow path to the other side, right? Quote unquote, the other side, right? It's like almost like crossing the Jordan into heaven. So that's pretty exciting. Okay, so what else was I gonna say? So yeah, that's pretty cool. I love this scenario that I'm describing here with the celestial representation. I think that's uncanny. It's undeniable in my opinion. The other thing I want to mention is that, well, let me first just give you a few other hints here. So Acts 27 mentions the number 14 twice. I think it mentions it in, gosh, where is it? Let's see here. Okay, I found it. It's Acts 20. It's Acts 27 verses 27 and 33. Okay, so it mentions 14 twice, and that's a little conspicuous. Now, if you do, since it's mentioned twice, we say 14 times 2, which is 28. Okay, maybe I should just write this stuff down. Okay, 14 times 2 equals 28. Okay, now the 28 squared happens to be 784. Well, that looks familiar, doesn't it? Well, that's the current year by the Jewish reckoning is 5784. Current Jewish year. Whoa, can't type today. Year equals 5784. So that's a little clue. And 784, if you watch my last videos, you know that's also the Hebrew Gematria value of Methuselah, okay, whose death brought the flood. And that was the first judgment, and we're sitting here waiting for the second judgment. And I think I'll mention something else about Methuselah that ties into this towards the end of this video. Okay, so that's the first clue. The next clue is that verse where 276 is mentioned, which is 2737, right here, okay? So you got 3 numbers involved here, right? Because it's Acts 27, 37, okay? And then it mentions 276, okay? So I see 3 numbers here. I see 27, I see 37, and I see 6, right? Because you got the 27 here twice. Whoops, twice. You got 37. You get the 6. Now, if you multiply these, whoops, you get the product is 5994. That's the current year, the actual year, because the Jewish year is off by 210 years from the correct year, right? The rabbis hid 210 years to try to hide the Messiah. So that's cool. And then somebody on Twitter showed me, I think he goes by the handle G44, brother on Twitter. He showed me this 276 is equal to 12 times 23, which is 12, i.e. December Can't type today. December of 23. December of 2023. Okay. And we've also got 2 times 7 times 6 is equal to 84. Now, you should know that Enoch in Hebrew Gematria equals 84. Whoops. And you should also know that Enoch lived 365 years, which is a clue, right? Because New Year's Eve, remember Enoch was the first person to get raptured, right? New Year's Eve is the 365th day of the year. Okay? Also known as the last day. Well, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? Because Jesus said, "I will raise him at the last day." And where did he say it? He said it in John chapter 6. Okay? And he said it conspicuously. He said it 4 times. I'm sorry, I can't really zoom this in, unfortunately. But it just shows John 6 and the 4 verses where he says, but should raise it up again at the last day. I will raise him up at the last day. I will raise him at the last day. I will raise him up at the last day. Okay? The 4 verses, and the verse numbers are 39, 40, 44, and 54. Okay? Now, John is the 4th book of the Bible, and this is chapter 6. Okay? So, let me expand this a little bit here. John 6 is equal to 46, right? 4th book of the Bible, 6th chapter, okay? And then you've got the where was it? Here. 39, 40, 44, 54, okay? It's in verses 39, 40, 44, and 54. Okay? And we take a calculator here and add 39 to 40 to 44 to 54. It gives you 177. Now, if you take that 46 and you add it to 177, gives you 223, referring to 2023. Now, there you go. I will raise you up at the last day of 2023. Is that what it means? Maybe. It's cool to think about. Now, let's see. What's the next thing? So I mentioned Regium. Yeah, another interesting thing about this date, and it's the reason a lot of people are getting married, according to the news I saw, a lot of people are getting married on this date, is because of its number significance. So it's 12, 31, 23, which is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So that also would fulfill the eating and drinking, buying, selling, marrying, and giving in marriage, right? That verse. But 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. If you take 1, 2, 3, and you add it to its reverse, equals 4, 4, 4, which is the door. Another thing is if you take these 2 New Testament mystery numbers, 276 minus 153, you get 1, 2, 3. So very interesting. Okay, yeah, I have a whole, I've got a whole, I do a lot of like numerology stuff on Twitter, and I tend to post it there. So I will post a link to that if you guys want to look at I have really a lot of cool stuff about studying a lot of these connections between these different numbers that are found in the Bible. I'll post a link to that in the description and maybe the pinned comment as well. What's another thing? So there's that famous verse, which is Matthew 24:36. Somebody else on Twitter pointed this out. But of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. I'm sure we've all heard that one before. So that's Matthew 24:36, which you can say is like a 2 and a 43 and a 6. But you add together the 4 and the 3, and you get the 276, or 276, right? Whoops. So is that verse giving us a little hint that the people who understand the meaning of the 276 may know the day, maybe even the hour? I don't know the hour. And of course, I'm not saying that this is the day. I'm just saying, here's the information, decide for yourself. But it looks promising. Last day of 2023. Of course, it depends on your time zone. It could be, that could be the thing about how it's the 27th and 28th of December plus 3 days takes you to the 30th and the 31st of December. So that could mean that it's going to be the 31st in the Far East, and it's still going to be the 30th in, I don't know, like west of Jerusalem, so like America and Europe. I don't know, but I'm just telling you guys that this is what I'm seeing, and it looks like it's pretty close. So let me minimize that real fast, and I think I'll take a breather. Okay, I'm back. A couple of things I thought I should have mentioned. I didn't. So what I meant to say here is this is the current year, Anno Mundi, I guess I'll say. It's in my chronology, it's Anno Fall. It's the year of the fall is 5994, and the current year Anno Mundi is 6001. But some people, but I'll just simplify it because most people don't, use my chronology. I don't think anybody other than me actually uses my chronology. So most people understand Anno Mundi. So I'll just say Anno Mundi, but that's the current year, in the corrected Jewish scheme, I'll just say. And I also was thinking that this, where is it? Stellarium. Okay, so the Sagittarius and Gemini are the I'm saying it backwards. I'll say it like this. Gemini and Sagittarius are the 3rd and 9th constellations, okay? So you got Gemini over here and Sagittarius over here. And the way you number them is you number them from Aries, right? I think that's based on, don't quote me on this, but I think it's Exodus chapter 40, verses 1, I think, where he says, and this shall be the first month of the year for you. Then he talks about the lamb. That's how you know that Aries, the lamb, is the first moon, the first constellation, right? So you get Aries is the first, and Taurus is the second, and Gemini is the third. So this is like the path that the sun and the moon follow. This is the ecliptic, right? This orange line here. Anyway, the point is that Gemini is the 3rd constellation, and Sagittarius is the 9th constellation. So you got a 3 and a 9, and I think that's one of the reasons why God chose to put this account in Acts 27, because 9 times 3 is 27, and it's talking about it. And that Acts 27 is describing a celestial scene that's using the 3rd and the 9th constellation. There are some other reasons why it's using 27, and also why the number 119 is very significant in Acts, in the book of Acts. And that's a very cool thing. I really don't have time to get into that right now, but if you go to my Twitter, Numerology Studies, it explains it there. Basically, like if you look at binary numbers, and if you structure a binary number to look like a door, with like walls on the side, all those numbers, so it starts with 5, then it goes to 27, then it goes to 119. If you keep adding ones on the side, that's sort of the shortest way I can describe that. But if you go to my Twitter, it explains that. It's really, really cool. Let's see what's next. So yeah, the thing is, the enemy is currently telegraphing the book of Acts too, believe it or not. So they've got their little movie by Barack Obama's production company, which is called Higher Ground Productions, which I think is sort of a tongue-in-cheek reference to the mega tsunamis that are coming. But they have the film called Leave the World Behind. Okay. Now I can't really show you the film. I don't want to have this video get blocked. But so I didn't really watch it all the way. I just kind of skimmed through it. But I saw like already the critical elements. So in the beginning, so they're taking a vacation on Long Island. Okay, this sort of impromptu vacation. One of the first things they showed is this roundabout from above. So that's showing like the ring eclipse. So that's the celestial marker in time. You know, ring eclipse on October 14th. And then they go to beach and they're hanging out there. Let me see if I can. Yeah, so they're hanging out there under a conspicuously yellow beach umbrella. Okay, and the little girl notices that this oil tanker is coming directly towards them on the beach. So there's an oil tanker out on the water that's coming directly towards them. She's the first one to notice it, and then they all start to realize that's the case. Okay, and so this oil tanker called White Lion then runs aground. The ship runs aground. Okay, now that should sound familiar because they're telegraphing the Book of Acts narrative. Okay, and there's other reasons, not just that. That by itself is kind of tenuous, but there are other reasons to think that. For instance, like later in the film, there's this really stilted, pointless dialogue between some of the characters where they're looking out the window and the black woman says, do you remember when we took that trip to Italy? And then the guy says, well, why do you say that? And she says, oh, I don't know, I got nothing else to think about, or something like that. It's really stupid. I mean, let me see if I can try to find because I did post that on Twitter. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, this is the dialogue, right? He says, do you remember that time the three of us went to Italy? And she said, or she says that, and then he says, what made you think of that? I don't know what else to think about. It's just really pointless dialogue. I think they just put it in so it's enough. They have to have this hint that they're really referring to the Book of Acts, okay? Because remember, Paul was prisoner and he was being taken on a ship to Italy, okay? So you've got that. There's some other Gematria stuff that I found that connects to the Book of Acts, but that's what they're showing. They're showing the Book of Acts because they know that Book of Acts, chapter 27, 28, is really describing the celestial scene just before the rapture. Okay, so getting back to that film, yeah. So the other thing is that they've got this really conspicuously yellow large beach umbrella. Okay, and I don't know if I can really play this here without my video getting blocked. Okay, I'm gonna play it, see, really small or something like this, and then just keep pausing it. Okay, so what you got here is the ship is moving towards this yellow umbrella, but it's all relative, right? So really it's kind of like the yellow umbrella is moving towards the ship. Okay, and what that's symbolizing is the sun moving towards the upper, Sagittarius. Okay, so that's sort of this way. There's like, they do this kind of stuff all the time in movies. They use really like artful ways to depict astro symbolism, like they do it in music videos all the time. So let me go back to Stellarium. So like I said, in the time, so the sun started back here, right? On the 14th, right? And that was the ring eclipse, the wedding ring eclipse in Virgo's hand. Okay, so they showed that with the roundabout when they filmed it from above. Okay, and then as time passes, the sun's moving, and iPet Goat is also showing this same exact thing, right? Because they've got the sun rolling from that little girl, right? And it's being the sun's being represented by the apple, and the little girl is inside a honey ring. So the ring is representing that ring eclipse. Excuse me. And so the apple rolls to well, first let me just describe this. Okay, so the sun is going from the wedding ring eclipse, and it's going to this little ship, right? Our little ship here. Okay, that's what's being depicted there in that scene, because the ship from the ship's perspective, it's coming, towards the sun, but it's really, in reality, it's the sun moving towards the ship. So it's that yellow beach umbrella getting closer to that oil tanker is what they're showing there, right? Where you're showing the sun moving towards the upper part of Sagittarius, right? So they're telling you that's around the time when everything's supposed to start. Okay, now in iPad Go 2, the way they do it is that apple rolls to what looks like, I think it's a shoe, but I think it's supposed to be Barack Obama's shoe or something. But there's an LC right by it, right? So, but if you look at the bottom part of Sagittarius, see it's like this kind of L and a C here. That's the bottom part of the Sagittarius constellation lines. And then there's a Corona Australis crown thing here that looks like a C. That's how they show that when the apple hits that it's hitting Sagittarius, okay? So, yeah, they're showing in that scene that, and there's a couple other things going on here, okay? The White Lion is a famous slave ship. It's one of the first slave ships to arrive in the Americas, okay? It arrived carrying slaves in like 1619. Now, that's exactly 404 years ago. And there are 404 verses in the book of Revelation, okay? So that's another thing they're telling you, that the book of Revelation is about to start. What's the next thing? The White Lion, which is the name of the ship. Like if you go to Wikipedia, it's called the White Lion. If you look in, so if you just type in the White Lion, right? And then you do Donald J. Trump, you've got a very strong match. You've got these two very strong ciphers here, ordinal and reverse, matching perfectly to the White Lion. Okay, and it's also, look, it's a ship coming out of the sea, so to speak, right? So it's like the beast that rises out of the sea, and it matches to Donald Trump. So they're telling you also that Donald Trump's Antichrist, in addition to about the 33,000 other ways they tell you that. It's amazing to me that people just still say stupid things like, oh, it's I don't know, Barack Obama or something. Anyway, it's just, in my opinion, which maybe isn't so humble, should be more humble. But so that's that film. What else can I show you guys? Let me just take a little break. Okay, let's see. I think I'll show you. So something I've noticed recently, which I posted on Twitter. Hopefully I can find it here. I think this is it. Okay. So I've noticed that the enemy is telegraphing two numbers really, really strongly. Okay. The first one is 104, and the other one is 192. I don't even know if I should talk about this because this is going to get really complicated. But so for the 104, here are some examples. So these are all simple ordinal unless stated otherwise. Out of time. Okay, so they just re-released nationwide for one day or one weekend, like I think it was November or October, the film Back to the Future. Okay, nationwide in actual movie theaters. Okay, so that out of time maps to 104. Robert Card, the main shooter, maps to equals 104 in simple ordinal. I'm Matman. So Matthew Perry, before he drowned, on his Instagram, he kept posting this bizarre statement, I'm Matman, that equals 104. Drowning equals 104. Dixie Chicks, so the founding member just died like last week, equals 104. David Kozak, the big shooting in the Czech Republic, in Prague, equals 104. Bobby Jean Carter just died, equals 104 in reverse reduction. Okay. Then there's that anti-Semite who threatened to shoot up 104 West, which is the dining hall, the Jewish dining hall in Cornell University. Okay. That happened in late October. The EAS alert test happened on October 4th, which is 104. There was a 104-year-old woman who skydove in late October. Okay. And then the 104th NFL season began this fall. I think there's a couple new ones lately. I noticed because there's something going on with the Maine, Trump being removed from the Maine ballot, and the state of Maine. I think Maine ballot equals 104. Let's see. Trump removed from ballot equals 104 and reduction. There's just a lot of 104 going on. Okay, so that's curious. Okay, so and then the other number that they're telegraphing is 192. Okay. Now here we go. Okay, all these words and phrases equal 192. This is a more diverse cipher going on here, but I should say a more diverse representation of ciphers than the 104 was almost exclusively simple ordinal. There actually could have been more 104s out there, but I wanted to choose only simple ordinal to show you how strongly they're signaling that number, that even only in the simple ordinal cipher it's showing up everywhere. If I had opened up to other ciphers, probably would have found plenty more. So in all these phrases are equaling to 192 in ordinal reverse or Sumerian, which sounds exotic, but really it's not. It's just the same exact cipher from Gematrix.org, which is described as English Gematria, because it's like an old cipher that's been used for centuries. Okay, so leave the world behind equals 192. Great tribulation equals 192. Deer, which this movie constantly shows deer, equals 192. Santa's Gotta Go. So that was that. If you're not familiar with that was the weird thing where it's kind of ritualistic thing where Barack Obama went to a classroom and he's reading a book. So it's supposed to be like he's fulfilling iPet Goat 2, which is a Antichrist satanic prophecy, and because first they show George W. Bush in that short animated film. They show George W. Bush reading a book in a classroom, and then they show Barack Obama reading a book in a classroom. And George Bush was reading that book on the day of 9/11. Barack Obama is reading it now. It's pretty ominous because the title of it's iPet Goat 2, but the occult title of that short film is 9/11 Part 2. Okay, so they're telling you this is the second 9/11. It's just is what that thing is describing, what it's prophesying, right? So that's what Santa's Gotta Go about. That was the name of the book that Obama was reading to the children in that classroom. Okay, so that equals 192. Obama equals 192. Drowned in hot tub, like Matthew Perry, equals 192. Bing, as in Chandler Bing, that's Matthew Perry's character name on Friends, equals 192. And in case you don't think this is intentional, in this movie, Leave the World Behind, at the very end of the movie, they go into a bunker which is called Commodus. Okay, Commodus was a Roman emperor who was assassinated in 192 BC. Okay, and amazingly, he was actually strangled in his bath, which is sort of rhymes with what happened to Matthew Perry there. Okay. What is this all about? So why? Okay, the other thing is 192. So since September 11th, 2001, okay, it's been exactly 1,163 weeks on December 6th, as of December 26th, as of December 26th. 1163 is the 192nd prime number. Okay, so I think that's in part why they're using this number 192. Okay, it's encoding the number of weeks between the two, the first 9/11 and the second 9/11. So obviously nothing happened on December 26th, but I think it's pointing to that or not necessarily that specific day, but the week starting with that date, okay, which New Year's Eve falls within, which is noteworthy. And also, I mentioned here, yeah, that date is when the sun was perfectly centered over that, canoe, so to speak, of Sagittarius. Okay, so what the other thing that's interesting about this date is that, let me see if I can find. So 104 and 192. Okay, so 104 is 10-4. Like I said, they did the EAS alert test on all the cell phones on 10-4. Now, if you add 88 to that, right, because 88 is also the number that they're using all the time. So 104 plus 88 is 192. And 10-4, October 4th, right, plus 88 days is exactly New Year's Eve. So I think that's another, alarming, I guess, numerical alignment there. Okay. The next thing I want to show is about this this book that's called Santa's Gotta Go, that Obama read to the classroom. Now, Steve Fletcher did a really good analysis in which he pointed out that the narrative of the book actually is the same narrative of, I forget where it was, but it's the account of the where Jesus is talking about when an unclean spirit has gone out of a man, he goes looking for it. He goes through dry places, and then he comes back later and finds the place swept and clean. And he comes back with like 7 unclean spirits more evil than himself. Okay, so that's the sort of like the subtext, I guess, if you want to say, of the narrative. You know what? For some reason, that didn't pull anything up. Hang on a second. Okay, I found it. So I was looking at the content of this book, and there's a point in the story where Santa comes to the house and he like makes a big mess or whatever, and at one point he's like this is supposed to be Christmas Eve or whatever, right? So he's there Christmas Eve, and it says here on the sleigh 11:59, and he yells figgy pudding, right? Okay, and then after that he goes inside and he says, okay, yeah, he yells figgy pudding. It's sort of like he's cursing, or, because his sleigh won't start. So he goes inside to order a new part for his sleigh called a yip yip fuse or something like that. There's probably some Gematria on that as well. And he says that it would take 3 days to arrive. So that's very familiar. That's sort of the exact same temporal scenario that's going on in that Acts 27 narrative, right? Where you've got like a point in time plus 3 days. So we thought, actually, just like we thought with Acts, we thought that it would be Christmas plus 3 days. But what we found was, if you take that, the way he says figgy pudding, it's spelled with 7 I's here. And if you use that exact spelling, it matches to 1227, okay? Which is looked very familiar right off the bat. Yeah, that kind of looks like December 27th. Now, if you add the 3 days to that, it takes you to actually, if you think about it, it's at 11:59. So it's really, he's saying 12:27 at 11:59, which is pretty much the time that's crossing over from the 27th to the 28th. So here we've got the exact same thing that the celestial scenario that Acts 27 and Acts 27 and 28 is depicting, December 27th and 28th is being depicted here in this like encoded word figgy pudding, right? With the time here, the 27th going into the 28th. And then in the narrative, like I said, he said it'll take 3 days to arrive. So that matches exactly the what's going on in Acts, where he's talking about the 27th and the 28th, but then they says that they tarry for 3 days in Syracuse. So it's just astonishing that it's to me, it's obvious that the enemy is using a lot of stuff from the book of Acts here, not only in this, but in Leave the World Behind, like we've seen, to show where we are, prophetically, Did I show this? Yeah, figgy pudding, yeah, equals 1227. So there's that. Yeah, and then there's this film called This Is the End. It's this a comedy film from, I don't know, like 5 years ago or something. And it depicts like the rapture and the apocalypse. And in the scene right before the rapture happens, they're in the gas station. And these two characters here, one's holding a Milky Way, and the other one's holding this orange drink. Okay, I don't know if it's a Sunkist or a Fanta. I think it's a Fanta. I'm not sure, but it's an orange drink, and the orange is a symbol for the sun. Okay, and the other guy's holding a Milky Way, and right at that time frame, right before the rapture, is the sun is in the Milky Way. Okay. So here, in this picture, I took out the constellation line so you can see it more clearly. How the sun, assuming the rapture happens on the 31st, the sun is in the Milky Way just before that, just as that film is. This Is the End is showing you, right, with the Milky Way candy bar and the orange drink. Actually, I'm pretty sure that even on the 31st, it's still in the Milky Way. So on the 30th and the 31st. I mean, it's kind of on the left side of it, but it's more or less still in the Milky Way. Let's see what else I got here. So somebody from Russia, a sister from Russia, showed this. This is a Economist magazine cover from 2022. Okay. I think it's in November. Yeah, November 2022. So she said that this is also showing the same symbolism, that say goodbye to 1.5 C, right? So ostensibly it's about some sort of climate change nonsense. But C equals to 3, right, in Gematria. So it's say goodbye to 153. In other words, say goodbye to the church, the believers. And you can say goodbye to 153 when the apple, which represents to the sun in a lot of their occult stuff, is over this arrow, right? And if you look at Sagittarius, it's a guy on a horseman, whatever, holding a bow and drawing it with this arrow. So you got the sun over an arrow. So in other words, that magazine is saying say goodbye to the church, 153, when the sun is in Sagittarius. So they're telling you that the rapture is going to happen around that time, and then when the sun is in Sagittarius. Which happens every year in December, but like I said, if you look at the other stuff, like the moon being in Gemini, you can see that it's narrowing it down to 2023, in addition to all the other stuff that I found with the numbers, the 5784, the 5994, the other stuff I showed as well. Let's see, anything else? This is something I thought was cool. I thought it was really cool. I don't know if anybody else does, but it's my video, so you have to listen to it. All right, so Noah's grandfather, his name was Methuselah, okay? And if you watch my other video, you know that, so Methuselah, his name value equals 784, and his name itself was a prophecy of the coming judgment, because his name means literally his death shall bring, right? So by God naming him Methuselah, he was giving them their forewarning, right? The prophecy that when Methuselah dies, that's when the judgment comes, right? Because there was a whole lot of evil going on in that time. Now, Methuselah lived his 969 years, okay? And once he died, the flood began, the judgment began, the flood of Noah, okay? So here we are now, the biblical tribulation period is about to start, and there's just been a hugely popularized death of a man named Matthew Perry, okay? Now, Matthew Perry has French ancestry, and his surname, Perry, means, in French, rock or stone. And the Hebrew word for rock is Selah. There's actually a couple of words, but if you just if you go to Google Translate and type in rock, the one that comes up is Selah, okay? So if you then take Matthew's last name, Perry, and replace it with the Hebrew word, Selah, you get Matthew Selah. So you got Methuselah, whose death brings the first judgment. And then you've got this guy who just died, Methuselah, 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 Methuselah. I think that's got to be true. And to top it off, remember, Methuselah lived 969 years. He died at 969. Matthew Perry was born in 1969. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. They say like history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. So this is kind of an instance of that. And so the rest of it here is some speculation I had about the tribulation beginning on Christmas, which didn't happen. Some trivia here. His friend's character, Chandler Bing, has a fictional birthday of April 8th. 48 is the 223rd prime, signaling 2023. From that date of his fictional birth date, 4/8/1968, to the ring eclipse was exactly 666 months and 6 days, which cannot be an accident in my view. Obviously intentional. Okay, so at Matthew Perry's funeral, they played this Peter Gabriel song, called "Don't Give Up," and this video, if you watch the music video, it's basically the whole video is nothing but these people like hugging and dancing and singing, and in the background there's an eclipse forming. That's the entire video, and at the moment of conjunction, it's not just an eclipse, but it's obviously a ring eclipse. You can see it here. I took a screenshot. So not only is there 666 months and 6 days between his fictional character that he's famous for birthday and the ring eclipse, they happen to show this ring eclipse or play a Peter Gabriel song whose video is about it shows a ring eclipse at his funeral. What did I say here? Yeah, the song was actually released in October on the same which was the same month as the 2023 ring eclipse, exactly 444 months prior to the eclipse. So that's just some stuff that I had noticed about that video. So honestly, you could go on and on with the ring eclipse stuff. I have so many threads about that. If you go to my Twitter, I must have like 40 different crazy predictive programming stuff having to do with the ring eclipse, with like date measurement, date alignments and stuff like that have like significant numbers like 666 or 153 or 726. But yeah, you can find all that there. So obviously they were signaling that ring eclipse hard because they knew that that's most likely the final solar eclipse prior to the end, right? What the Great Tribulation, what they refer to as the storm. So let me think real fast if there's anything else, or if I just want to end this video at this point. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else really super interesting, but I guess I'll mention this real fast. I think, yeah, our brother from who runs the Robert Pent channel showed this to me. So this is that Blondie music video. I don't know when it was made. Maybe, I have no idea. It's called Doom or Destiny. Maybe it was like 10 years ago or something. But they show this. It's supposed to be like a meteorologist kind of a spoof. I don't know what you call it. Just they're showing it in that format where they're showing like a weather forecast, and they're showing like thermonuclear war on Sunday, December 31st. And yeah, this year, December 31st is on a Sunday. So that's that's another, by itself, it's just, okay, well, that's a coincidence. But with all this other stuff we've been showing, that maybe they were showing us the truth there. Yeah, there's some other stuff about the fact that it's a full moon right now. I mean, I don't know if it's still a full moon, but it's pretty close to a full moon. And I think scripture says at the time of the full moon. I don't know if that means exactly at the full moon, or at the time of the full moon means like a broader, like a few days afterwards, if that still qualifies. Gosh, I think that's it. I can't think of anything else. But for me, the big thing is really discovering that the Acts 27 and 28 describes this sort of, or in a hidden way, it describes this celestial scene just to a T. I mean, it's so uncanny, it's so perfect that it cannot just be an accident. And the fact that then the narrative describes 3 days after that, the 27th and the 28th, and that points exactly to New Year's Eve, last day of 2023. It could be. I guess we'll find out. Okay, one more quick thing I wanted to add. Because I had mentioned that the enemy uses this person standing in a canoe symbolism in their films and music video and stuff, I just wanted to give you some examples of that. Okay, so we know that God used the ship narrative in part because Sagittarius, the upper part of it, resembles a ship. Okay, or you can say that he designed the stars that way because he knew that was going to happen. Whatever. The point is that the enemy also depicts that upper part of Sagittarius, because this is a very important constellation as it relates to the end times, because it's one of the last constellations that the sun goes through before the end times start, or it actually is the last one. So the way they show it is not a ship with a mast, but a ship or a canoe with a person standing up in it, because if you look at it, it also kind of looks like a canoe with a person standing up in it. And they show that in iPet Goat 2. You can see that here, and you see this very, very conspicuously well pronounced fore and aft masts here. Okay, just like the canoe here, quote unquote, just like the constellation lines in Sagittarius, right? Same thing with Skyfall here. You got James Bond standing up in this canoe. Why is he standing? Why would he be standing in that scenario, right? It's because they want to make him look like this this part of Sagittarius. And you also have very pronounced fore and aft masts, in the canoe to make it, look like that. Same thing with Taylor Swift's Karma music video, okay, which has a ton of astro symbolism in it. They've got her standing up in a canoe with her little friend there. So sometimes what they'll do is, okay, so in iPet Go 2, they have flames at his feet, okay? I think there are even flames in his eyes. I don't remember, but that's supposed to be the hint that this is the sun. So when this thing is, he's representing the person standing in the canoe, but also the sun being in that position. And the same thing with to an extent, the same thing is going on in Skyfall. What they did there is with the cinematography, they showed what's his real name? I forget. Whatever. James Bond going behind this fire. So at some point, the fire is kind of looking at it like it's at his feet. So that shows that he's the sun. And the other clue they give you in this scene, if you look at a wider shot of it, I don't think I have one, is that there's all these. So it's this like Chinese lantern festival. So there's all these lanterns floating out. You can't see them all here, but there's just thousands of them around him, right? Going into the entrance to this festival. That's like a clue that this is an astro symbolic scene, because those lanterns are telling you, okay, these are stars, right? Stars in the sky. So you should be looking at this. That's the clue. That's the tip off, right? You should be looking at this as a celestial scene. Okay. Let's see. So there's that, and then the other thing is that in iPet Go 2, I think if I have it here somewhere, when he's on this canoe, and he comes out, you've got the lotus flower floating on the water, and then the exact same thing is shown. Amazingly, the exact same thing is shown in the Skyfall. This is another shot of that, right? So you see James Bond here, and he's the cinematography has this fire. This is in the foreground, but James Bond is moving from left to right in this canoe in the background. So he comes into this fire here. So that shows that he's the sun, right? And the Sagittarius constellation is the canoe. Of course, he's also representing the canoe itself, or the Sagittarius constellation itself, because he's the mast also, right? Because he's standing up in the middle of it. And all the little lanterns in the background, that gives you that's a tip off that this is a astro symbolic scene. This is a celestial scene. And then look in the background. This is really why I brought this picture up, to show you. You've got this lotus flower floating on the water, exactly like their little satanic prophecy video iPad Go 2. You got the lotus flower floating on the water right there. And so, yeah, and then you got the same thing going on in karma. What is the other thing I wanted to show? Let me see. Oh yeah, I remember now. So it's like right after that they give you another hint. So this is the end scene. Okay, so you've got the sun here, and this water that goes from here off into the distance. I guess you can kind of say that's like the Milky Way. That's what Robert Pent thinks. I think that's plausible. So it's showing you also the sun in the Milky Way, which is exactly, if you look at Stellarium in that scene, you've got the sun over this, the person standing in the canoe, if you will, the sun, which is to say the sun over at Sagittarius, okay? And it also happens to be, that's this whitish band here, that's the Milky Way, okay? If we back out a little bit, it's more easily seen. So they're showing you the sun in the Milky Way. And then, look, you got Venus and Libra. That's what some other music videos, like Taylor Swift's Karma video starts off with her playing the role of the scales, and there's a statue of Venus de Milo right adjacent to that, and then there's a light shining over her head, so they're showing you that Venus is in Libra. So this is all lining up. All the stuff that they're trying to, the little satanic warnings that they give you, it's all lining up, okay? And then if you look, that's all that, by the way, that scene with the scales and Libra is also done by Doja Cat in her video called You Right. So the video starts with her doing the same exact thing. So she's playing the role of the scales, and you've got the light overhead. So they're showing you Venus and Libra, okay? And then if you look at here, you've got the stinger of Scorpio, okay, right there. And then you've got the sun there. So the stinger of Scorpio is right there. So if you look at this exact, like literally, then the sun should be right here, okay? But where my mouse pointer is, okay? But the sun is never there, okay? The sun, it doesn't happen in reality, okay? Because if you look at the ecliptic, that's what the sun follows. It follows the ecliptic. So the sun being in that position next to the stinger. I see this is an artistic description. It's not going to be accurate. So the sun would be anywhere between, mid to late December is going to qualify as satisfying this artistic, unrealistic depiction of the sun being near the stinger. So this is all, this is all art. So it's not going to be something you can use as an exact roadmap. But nevertheless, it's satisfying so many things. It's got the sun, close enough to the stinger of the Scorpio right here, okay, by being here in the Milky Way, right? And also as that other movie showed us that we were looking at, that comedy film, This Is the End, right? They showed the Milky Way bar and the sun, and then you've got in multiple videos and music videos and stuff and films and stuff, they have the sun in the upper part of Sagittarius. Let's see, what else can I show? Okay, yeah, I guess I can show why I said earlier that the title of this short film, this Satanic Prophecy, is 9/11 Part 2, because if you look at the title, it's on these blocks, right? So this is, I moved back to the beginning of the film, and there are 11 blocks, okay, and then there are only 9 of them like actually colored, because there's 2 of them that are just white. So that's telling you 9/11 and then 2. So 9/11 Part 2. So this is a satanic prophecy about the second 9/11, which is not going to be like the first 9/11, a couple buildings falling. It's going to be like, 2 orders of magnitude greater, something like mega tsunamis hitting the U.S. coast, nuclear war, basically the beginning of the apocalypse. And the other thing about, what was I going to say about this? I constantly lose my train of thought. There's just so much stuff. Oh yeah, I was going to say, yeah, the makers of this are called Heliofont. So the reason they're called that is because Helio is Helios, which means the sun, which is another word for, which I should say, Helios and both Helios and Apollo mean the sun, right? Refer to the sun in mythology. And then font means to speak. It's the French root word or Latin or something. It's like, that's why you say a infant, because that means not speaking, because infants don't speak. That's why we have the word infant. So font means speak. So heliofont means like Apollo speaks. So it's like an antichrist prophecy, or like a Satan's prophecy. That's what heliofont means, right? So they're telling you this is a satanic prophecy, and it's about 9/11 part 2. So I guess that's it. If I think of anything else, I'll try to tag it onto this video towards the end, before I post it. So anyway, thanks again for sticking out to the end, and appreciate you being here. God bless.